Okay. So how was the feeling when you heard you're on the shortlist?
Oh, it was excellent. I feel really grateful. Um, yeah, it also comes as a bit of a surprise. It always comes.
I mean, you've been, while I was researching you for this conversation, I found that you had won the short Commonwealth Prize for the African region in 2016. So I imagine you're very used to being on very prestigious list like this one.
Um, I mean, I have been shortlisted a few times, and obviously, but it's always still like a nice surprise and a nice honor to just get on a list like this. So I'm very grateful.
Okay. Okay. Before we talk about your story, um, I also know that you are a you're doing your PhD now in Harvard, yeah?
No, I finished.
Oh, you finished already. Oh, congratulations. How was that?
Thank you. It was good. It's a lot of work, but it was
Yeah.
good.
Okay. Oh, okay, that's interesting. So how do you define yourself now? Are you more a writer or a researcher? Like what's going on?
I mean, I would call myself an aspiring writer. I'm still working on the novel
Okay.
and still trying to kind of, yeah, just trying to get it out there. I would like to sort of develop myself as much as possible as a writer and still continue working in that area. But a lot of my time, I mean, my full-time job is still working in mental health.
Okay, mental health. Okay. So do you um intend to work in a university, or do you have something you do outside the university in terms of your mental health work?
My full-time job is at a foundation. I work for, yeah, I work for a philanthropy and I support organizations doing mental health work primarily in Africa. Primarily like advocacy work from the perspective of people with lived experience. I also am still a research associate at two universities, one at Harvard Law School and one at Wits Law School in South Africa.
Okay, so okay to your story. So gracious. Um, was there an inspiration for that story?
Um, I guess the inspiration is growing up in South Africa and seeing these two kind of worlds that are still, obviously South Africa has made a lot of progress, but it still has a lot of inequalities and a lot of challenges. Um, and I think, there's also an element of my own, I guess, my own kind of worlds and my own understanding of the world that has been informed a lot by, losing a sibling when I was younger. And this kind of idea of what constitutes a family and what constitutes sibling relationships. Um, so I think it's a combination of many different things. Um, and they kind of intersected in a way that I thought told an interesting story.
Okay, if I may explore the idea of identity more with you, because I find that South Africa is a very unique society in terms of the racial structure, if I may say. So you have the whites, the colored, and the black. And in your story, I noticed obviously the the protagonist was a colored man. If I was, yeah, yeah. So how, from being an expert yourself, you do human rights and mental health, how do you find um, the identity question, how does it play out in that kind of complex setting that South Africa is?
Sorry, I didn't hear the end of the question.
So the identity question. So what does it mean to be? What does it mean for you to be? I mean, your identity as a person, and generally in societies of Africa, what does identity mean for many people?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's still a tension for a lot of people when it comes to sort of locating yourself in a broader society like South Africa, and also like the US. I mean, being in the US, I think it's a similar feeling. Um, I'm uh, I'm from a South Asian background, and so I think it's not dissimilar to the protagonist because of the fact that you sort of exist in this in between space between the white and the black, and you have a kind of in between space where identity is it's not it's not that there's not a place. It's more just that it definitely feels as though there's a sense of being in between two different identities and being in between two different worlds. But at the same time, I think there's other identities that are developing and growing, and there's the identity of the protagonist as a Muslim, because I think religion plays a significant part in the story. And then there's the identity of, his knowledge and the fact that he moved out of his previous community and moved into a more affluent community. And he's kind of navigating all of these different ways in which he's departed from his origin and kind of grown out of his identity into a completely different identity, and is still trying to navigate how to relate to his new siblings and his old siblings, if we can call them that, both of whom still have their identities intact.
Although this is not a theme you really explored to an extent, but the idea of conflict and identity. And although in the story we find, I forget his name, the protagonist, when his old family finds that, oh, okay, he has some other family. I'm sorry I don't have their names now, but we see the older sibling, the boy. He's kind of aloof, He's I get the sense from the story that it's like, well, you're not really my family. We kind of suspected that you were different. Also, if we extend this little conflict, not really one, but we can extend it to the wider African society, where there are real conflicts among ethnicities, within the country, and because of their identity. I wonder what you think about, like, how do you have any ideas or thoughts on how a very multi-ethnic community or multi-ethnic country can navigate this problem of identity, especially for those who are, like you said previously, find themselves between two identities?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's like one answer. I also feel as though I wouldn't want to oversimplify like any particular identity. There's so many different kinds of white, so many different kinds of black, so many different kinds of colored. Everybody carries an identity that is unique. And so I think the navigation happens both at a kind of social level as well as at an interpersonal and a personal level. Certainly all of us carry, sexualities, genders, occupational identity as a sane or a insane person, identity as somebody who is, I don't know, educated or is still being educated, or formally educated versus informally educated. So I feel as though the question of identity is one that we construct internally, but it's also informed by the world around us. And I imagine that the navigation happens. What I see happening is that the navigation is being influenced by changes in social circumstances. And I think that projects like this one, projects that actually emphasize African identity in a way that is, tells a story that's different and unique and individual. I think there's a lot of room for creativeness in actually constructing identity.
So was this a story you wrote for the prize, or is something you had in your collection? And you said, oh yeah, it fits very well with the theme, so let's go.
I had written it previously, and I had submitted it somewhere else, and it was actually in submission somewhere else when I came across this prize. Obviously, it's been withdrawn from there now, but yeah, it just seemed like a great fit for the theme that you had announced.
Okay. So that's interesting. Yeah, so you also, well, again, this is not really about story, but I find the character of the elder brother, who is soft. So in a reply to a text message, saying, I think I visited this other family, he says, Alhamdulillah, just like his father before him. There's this, I don't know if that's what you're going for, but there's this similarity between him and his father. And there's some sort of similarity between the colored protagonist and his other family, even though he's not known them. So he's working in a university, in the same university that one of his brothers is, works at, and then there's this his other sister as well, is, very academic as well. And you have this other family that is almost like their own parents. So what I mean is you find that in the story, the children are very much like their parents. And obviously in life, I think life kind of mirrors such realities very closely. So I was thinking, so do you like, what do you think? Is it a DNA thing, or is it like a product of the environment you've grown in? But then in the story, you find that even though he had grown in the same household as his elder brother, he has made very different choices. One has gone to prison, one has gone to university as a professor. So is it DNA, or what do you think?
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I mean, I feel as though that was one of the questions I was posing with the story was, how did they end up being so different when they came from the same place? And I think that there was always a sense that he was a little bit different from his brother. And in some ways, the revelation of his parentage was some kind of validation of that difference. I didn't really want to try and answer the question of whether it was a biological difference or whether it was some kind of other difference. I wanted to sort of pose a question. And I also wanted it to be, I guess I wanted it to be a bit of a provocation about, what is, I don't know, what is his place in this family if he now is completely different, but at the same time still attached? Because it seems to me when I was writing and when I was trying to embody the protagonist, it doesn't seem to me that the internal conflict is resolved by the end of the story. It seems to me like he's still trying to figure out his place. And
Okay.
so, sorry.
No, go on.
So to me, it's still a somewhat open-ended question.
Okay. So if we were to speak to, given your success as a writer, if you had to advise young, aspiring African writers, what would you be saying to them?
I think just don't give up. Like it's not an easy pursuit. I think it comes with a lot of self-doubt. I think it comes with a lot of rejection, and comes with a lot of pain. But like if you have a story, yeah, just keep trying to tell it.
Okay. Okay. Is there another thing you'd like to say?
Just thank you. Like, I mean, I really appreciate the opportunity. I think I'm so glad that there's places like this, and forums that are growing in the African continent and in the global South in general. Like, it's just I'm really grateful.
No worries, no worries. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Take care.